My name is Alex Parker, and the events I'm about to describe still feel like a vivid nightmare. This is not a work of fiction, but rather a recount of a terrifying experience that happened to me 3 years ago. It was during a particularly tough time in my life, when I had just moved into a small, run-down apartment in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. The rent was cheap, and I needed a place to stay, so I didn't think twice about taking it. What I didn't know was that this decision would lead me into a chilling encounter that still haunts me. The apartment complex was old and had a long history, with each unit bearing signs of its age. Creaky floors, dim lighting, and walls thin enough to hear the neighbors' conversations. My unit was on the ground floor, with a narrow hallway leading to the front door. The previous tenant had left in a hurry, leaving behind a few pieces of old furniture and a sense of neglect. The landlord mentioned something vague about them having personal issues, but I didn't press for details. The first few nights were uneventful, just the usual settling in noises as I unpacked my belongings. But on the fourth night, something strange happened. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a faint knock on the window. It was past midnight, and my bedroom window faced a narrow alley that was usually empty. I brushed it off as a stray cat or maybe the wind. But the knocking continued, growing more insistent. Curiosity and a touch of anxiety got the better of me, and I approached the window. The blinds were closed, and for a moment, I hesitated. Then, I slowly lifted a slat to peek outside. My breath caught in my throat. There, standing in the alley, was a man. He was tall, with a gaunt face and deep-set eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. He didn't move or say anything, just stood there staring at the window. I dropped the blinds and stumbled back, heart pounding. I tried to calm myself, thinking maybe it was someone who had the wrong apartment or was just loitering. But as I lay back down, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The knocking stopped, and after a while, I managed to fall asleep. The next day, I was on edge but tried to rationalize the experience. However, that night, the knocking returned. This time, it wasn't just the window. I heard soft tapping on the front door, as if someone was testing it, trying to get in. I froze, listening intently. The taps continued for a few minutes, then stopped. I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. No one was there. Over the next week, the disturbances became more frequent and unnerving. The knocking would happen at random times. Sometimes the window, sometimes the door. Once, I even heard soft footsteps outside in the hallway. The feeling of being watched was constant, and I started to dread nightfall. I confided in my friend Sarah about the strange occurrences. She suggested that it could be a prank or someone trying to scare me, but there was a seriousness in her voice that hinted she believed it might be something more. She offered to stay over one night to see if it would happen again, and I gladly accepted, needing the company. That night, with Sarah in the apartment, the knocking began again. We both heard it, and I could see the fear in her eyes. We approached the window together, and she lifted the blinds. There was no one there. As we stepped away, the knocking moved to the front door. It was louder this time, almost urgent. We rushed to the door, but once again, no one was there. Sarah suggested we call the police, but without any evidence, it felt pointless. However, I was scared enough to agree. When the officers arrived, they found no signs of forced entry or anyone suspicious in the area. They chalked it up to kids playing a prank and left, but I could see they didn't really believe that either. The next few nights were quiet, almost too quiet. I began to think maybe it was over, that whoever or whatever had been bothering me had moved on. But then, one night, I woke up to the sound of heavy breathing in the room. It was close, right next to my bed. I froze, too terrified to move. The air felt thick and cold, and for a few moments, I was paralyzed with fear. Slowly, I turned my head towards the source of the sound. In the dim light, I saw the same gaunt figure standing at the foot of my bed, staring down at me with those hollow eyes. His mouth was open, emitting the sound of labored breathing. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I reached for the bedside lamp, fumbling to turn it on. As soon as the light flooded the room, the figure vanished, leaving behind an icy chill. Shaking, I called Sarah and told her what happened. She urged me to leave the apartment immediately, and I didn't need convincing. I packed a bag and left that night, moving in with Sarah temporarily while I searched for a new place. I never went back to that apartment alone. I moved out as soon as I found a new place, leaving behind most of my belongings. I didn't care. I just wanted to be far away from whatever had haunted me there. To this day, I don't know what I experienced in that apartment. There was no logical explanation, no rational reason for the occurrences. But I know what I saw, what I felt. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination. Whether it was a restless spirit, a residual energy, or something else entirely, I can't say. All I know is that I never want to experience anything like it again.